WCON 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on air. I want to thank you for being with us today. I want to thank you for your comments from the show last week. Also, I want to remind you, continue to send us your comments to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. weshouldknowedu@gmail.com, and we will likely take that and process it and look at it and see if we can get the right folks to talk about the subject that you have in mind and maybe bring you some information and education. As we go forward with this week's show, I'm going to introduce the show a little bit different this week and ask you to bear with me for a moment. But the year was 1929, May 20th, 1929, at a place called Camp Glen in Morehead City, North Carolina. 400 applicants who had applied for positions there. Out of that, 67 were selected for a school. 42 of these men completed the school, and only 37 members were chosen to receive an oath of office for this state. Today, we're talking to the individual and to the person that publicly is the kind of the public face for the organization. It's called the North Carolina Highway Patrol, and we're talking with Colonel Glenn McNeill. Colonel, thank you for being with us first.
Thank you, sir. And
First Sergeant Mike Baker. Mike, thank you for being with us. You've been on before, and we've talked about some of the excellent services the North Carolina Highway Patrol renders. Colonel, we're looking at now 2,300 plus employees that you are the commander of. You are the person that has been selected with an exemplary career from inside the troop of the Highway Patrol to serve and run that organization. My first question is, how important is it for the governor to reach inside the organization and say, you're now the commander of the Highway Patrol?
Well, first of all, let me begin by saying thank you for the invitation. It's an honor and a privilege to be here and to be on your show. For me personally, I never dreamed of being in this position. And for Governor Cooper to have extended the invitation for me to serve in this capacity, I view it as a blessing from God, and I don't want to let anyone down.
Well, I told you off air a while ago when we were talking that you've got a spirit about you that just kind of calms everything down, and I sense that maybe comes from the environment in which you were raised. You were raised in the area of Reidsville, North Carolina, small town similar to this area and the small towns that surround us. You had a couple of traumatic experiences in your life. One of the things in reading, not only that others have wrote, but a little bit about your biography, it's almost as things were put in place for you to be where you are today, because even in high school, you were expected to be in some kind of law enforcement. Yeah, not necessarily the Highway Patrol, but that was where you were moving. And then the horrific situation with your mother, followed by family member, Rita, it seemed to galvanize that. Is that a summation that kind of fits?
Yes, sir, it does. My life's dream has always been to be a North Carolina State Trooper, especially since my mom's death. I don't want to use it as an excuse, but you know, our family, we went through such a difficult time, and for me, I had the opportunity to see a state trooper, and you know, as a young, impressionable youth, the dream was set for me, and I knew that I wanted to be a North Carolina State Trooper. Now, I would have never dreamed that I would serve in this capacity, being our commander, because I've only wanted to be a state trooper, to serve our state, to be able to render aid to those who are in need. And unlike my situation, you know, my mom's murderer was never captured, never identified. So it's always been a strong motivating factor for me to want to do this type of work, to try to aid other victims, people that have gone through various trials and tribulations, needing support from law enforcement. It has been and always will be a motivating factor for me to be and serve in this capacity.
I can only imagine what a person goes through with something that happens like that. It's got to be a weight. It's got to be something that you carry with you regularly and that you think about constantly. And it's almost like it's always there with you to remind you, I'm here.
No doubt. My mother was such a beautiful lady and just an awesome person, and I wish she were physically here with me right now, but she's not. But it is a weight. I think it always served as a motivating factor as well. You know, I want to honor her legacy by doing the work that I do now.
You carry her spirit forward elegantly, I'll say that.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Mike, you've got the dubious task, 78,000 miles of roads in North Carolina. All of these folks that work within the, not necessarily confines, but in the umbrella of the North Carolina Highway Patrol, second only to the state of Texas. And each and every day, folks step up with this sense of not only personal excellence in grooming, always squared away. I don't know if anybody with all the cameras out there on phones today has got anybody caught in a situation that was not a sharp situation. It's just, it amazes me. How hard is it to move forward and make sure you cover all the areas? And I know you're constantly hit by camera people, not expecting it and those kinds of things, but I've looked back at some of the things since we last talked, and all over the state, whether it's in Wilmington with folks running troopers off the road, or whether it's an unfortunate, horrific situation in Columbus County, you've been the face and the personality that presented what the Highway Patrol truly is.
You know, each day I'd come to work, the main thing that I want to do within the Public Information Office and being the spokesperson for the agency is not to rise myself or rise my office, but to make sure that I allow the organization to be proud of what myself and my Assistant Sergeant Knox does each day. We have a tremendous amount of people within the State Highway Patrol, both on the sworn and civilian side, that come to work every day and tirelessly work toward one goal, and that's providing a efficient public safety to the citizens of North Carolina, as well as those who visit our state. And one of the primary things that I strive to do each day is to allow the citizens of our state to see what our good people are doing each and every day.
Colonel, one of the things that kind of segues with that is that I was reading, I think if I can recall here without looking at my notes, it was the Greensboro News and Record, or it may have been WRL. But you talk about the patrol and the folks that work there as being ambassadors. You use the word ambassadors of the state. Expand on that a little bit.
I've had the opportunity to travel all over the country. And when I share with people that I'm from North Carolina, they will say, wow, your state troopers are sharp. And then I would go on to say, it would make my heart smile inside to be able to then tell them, well, it's funny that you would say that because I happen to be a North Carolina state trooper. You know, we're an organization that we believe and we pride ourselves in having a very tough academy. Mm-hmm. We want to tear you down, but to build you back up the Highway Patrol way. You know, we were created out of a need of public safety and to prevent fatal traffic accidents from occurring on our highway. You know, in my view, my vantage point, that's very noble work. Our uniform, the very patches that we have on our shoulders, represent our state. For me personally, I'd like to challenge each trooper that I encounter, each graduating class that I have conversations with and speak to at their various ceremonies. I want them to know and appreciate the weight of what it means to represent our state. And there is no more honorable word in my vocabulary than to be an ambassador for our state, to represent the goodwill, to be of service, to be willing to serve your fellow man or woman in need or distress. So, ambassador for our state, it's very appropriate in my view of the type of work that I see our folks, the good work that I see our folks doing day in and day out, 24/7.
Mike, one of the things that strikes me in this conversation is that your associate, again, that you just referred to, I recall reading an article and his comment, and this was about recruiting, you know, getting folks to look at Highway Patrol. and he was asked, explain what you're looking for. And he made this statement, and I think I've heard the Colonel make this statement too. We're looking for, quote, good people.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about, just for a minute before we have to go to our first break, what good people is in the eyes of people that carry the distinguished banner of the North Carolina Highway Patrol. Either one of you.
Go ahead, Colonel.
Good people that are from North Carolina or anywhere that can identify with being compassionate. When we respond to a crash scene, well, first of all, we train our folks in order to do the job and the work that they do. We place a very high premium on who is selected to train our troopers when they're in the academy. But when our folks respond to various calls for service, it could be a crash scene. We're responsible for taking charge and control of that scene, but we're also responsible for making sure that the victims involved in that crash scene are in a position to be able to receive the support, the medical help that they need, to make them whole with going through the court process, the claim process as it relates to this. Sometimes a traffic accident can be the most traumatic and horrific incident a person will ever go through. Well, it's our duty and responsibility to do a job that they've been trained to do and paid to do, but you can do it with compassion while serving as an ambassador for our state.
Those key mantras are kind of at the core, I think, of what the Highway Patrol is and what it's recognized for. We're going to take a quick break, and I want to follow up, Mike, with you on that same question and get your thoughts on it. Because when I hear people talk, or when I hear folks, and trust me, there's a lot of people out there that recognize the excellence and the unbelievable amount of training you guys go through. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking with the North Carolina Highway Patrol, literally the colonel with the Highway Patrol, and the person that's the mouthpiece for the Highway Patrol.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I want to thank you for being with us, and call a friend, ask them to tune in, stay tuned. We're talking with the commander, the colonel of the North Carolina Highway Patrol, Glenn McNeill. Also, we're talking with First Sergeant Mike Baker, who handles a lot of the PR and somewhat of the face, and you'll hear him talking a lot on TV about what's going on that the Highway Patrol may be engaged in. As we went off air, gentlemen, we're talking a little bit about this kind of core principle of the North Carolina Highway Patrol, and two of those that we were discussing was this idea of being a good person, also the idea of being an ambassador, which to some degree dovetails. Mike, when you're out throughout the state, and you might pop up on any TV channel, some of them not from this area, Wilmington, Asheville, wherever, that's not really hard for you to do because you've got some of the best people in the state of North Carolina working with you, right?
That's exactly right. And one of the things, JW, for me, specifically in being with the Highway Patrol, was I specifically remember going through basic school. And I remember my commandant at the time, he is now retired, saying that he didn't care if we only graduated one person, but that one person was going to be a quality law enforcement officer. And that's something that I think since 1929, even with Colonel McNeill here, we're not going to graduate quantity, we're going to graduate quality. Because Colonel McNeill has said several times, even when he came into office, he gave everybody on the patrol a challenge. And that was the challenge of being excellent in everything that you do. And, throughout the 18-year career that I've been on the patrol, that is one thing that makes me very proud to wear this uniform, because many have tried, but few have succeeded. And we really pride ourselves on being, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best, law enforcement organizations across the country.
Colonel, you've been involved in training, and in fact, as a major with the patrol, you were kind of oversight of the entire training process, which is kind of a coveted piece with the patrol, from my perspective. When you look at that and you think about folks coming in, Oftentimes I'm asked this question, what does it take to have the mettle to be a trooper? What does it take? Do you ever look at that class 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, and somewhere in the back of your mind you're thinking, I'm not sure this might not be where this guy wants to be? Because there is an elevation of expectation from just what we look at as the basic standards and requirements for North Carolina law enforcement, which is around 615 hours now, which is a lot more than it used to be. But when you step into the world of highway patrol, it's not just the hours you put in training, which is considerably more than that. I'll let you speak to that. But it's also something about that person. And we've talked about the good person and the ambassador, but there's a certain amount of mettle that's there that has got to be strong enough to endure in the world today particularly. It's always been there, but it seems like it's harder today. Could you speak to that?
Yes, sir. The folks that we attempt to recruit to do this job, we want to be upfront with them and share with them that this is a very dangerous profession. In the last 7 months, we have lost 3 state troopers that have died. Active duty, young folks that have died. So we have to place a premium on training. We make no mistakes about it. Our patrol school, who we allow to teach in our patrol school, it's very difficult. But our end goal is to not add another name to our memorial wall, honoring those who have been killed in the line of duty. I mentioned to you earlier about the school being so tough. We believe in literally tearing you down, but building you back up the highway patrol way. Our folks, we know once they get sworn in and once they get out of their field training process with a field training officer, they're going to then be assigned to work in counties by themselves. They have to be able to have the training, the articulation skills to be able to talk to people, to be able to de-escalate situations, to be able to be strong enough to get away from them until they can call for help and get the cavalry to the scene to be able to help them. So it all starts with training, but we have to first screen and hire the best and the brightest, and we're looking for people that are willing to be trained. And then once you show up on our campus, you have to be willing to be a putty of clay and be willing to allow us to mold you into our way. Defensive tactics, driving, de-escalation skills, defensive tactics. There are numerous skills that we're going to give you that are above and beyond. You mentioned the basic level of classes required, the roughly 650 hours that are mandated by the state. Well, with the Highway Patrol, because we believe in going above and beyond and striving for excellence, and that excellence begins with training. We give our folks more than 1,200 hours of initial basic training, more than doubling what the state requires of that entry-level officer. We more than double that with our state troopers because we want to invest in training starting out from the beginning. But our end goal is that we keep our troopers safe, that we give them the best training that we possibly can give them because we don't want to add another name to our memorial honor roll.
And Mike, I think as the Colonel explained that, and I sit there and listen to it, it strikes me that in your role now, that training has kind of a plurality approach all the way across the state, no matter whether I'm in Manteo or I'm in Murphy or wherever I am. If it's a North Carolina Highway Patrolman, a trooper that pulls up or what have you, whether it's an accident scene, whether it's a ticket situation or whatever it may be, that's a standardized expectation because that uniform and that badge represents the totality of that department. Is that what the public should expect?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that drew me to the Highway Patrol. I'm a third-generation trooper. My step-grandfather was on. He served as a trooper in the 40s. My uncle was a trooper in the 60s. And growing up as a young child, I would go to restaurants or whatever the case may be, and I would see somebody walk in with this uniform and just their gait, how they carried themselves, their professionalism. It just really made me aspire to be that person one day. And as I alluded to before, going through the basic school, as I'm sure the commander would echo this, man, I sat on the edge of the bed every day and quit in my mind. But I'm glad that I pursued through. I'm glad that I'm sitting here now as a state trooper, and I cannot tell you how proud I am to don this uniform every day, and I wear it with pride.
Colonel, I want to ask you this question along with the same thought. As you look at yourself now and coming from Reidsville, North Carolina, think about where you were in a small town, and if you're speaking to some folks that are much younger than I am, probably younger than you are, what would you say to them? I mean, I'm talking to the colonel of the Highway Patrol, and you've made it all the way up the ladder. You've gone through that school. You've made this happen not because of any contact anywhere, but you were pulled out of the ranks and put in charge of this school. What would you say to some kids out there looking at it going, well, I don't know whether I could ever do that or not? What would be your comment?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, I would begin by saying divine intervention. I consider myself to be a Christian leader. My father and my mother, their influence on my life is very important. The community in which I was raised in, the street that I come from, which was Winstead Street in Reidsville, all of the people that were from that community that had a hand in my upbringing, all of that influenced my arrival at where I am today. You won't find a North Carolina state trooper that loves our organization more than I do. I'm just so passionate about the public safety work that we do. I'm just honored and very fortunate to have the support of Governor Cooper and Secretary Eric Hooks, that I get the awesome opportunity to serve our organization in this capacity and to be the commander of the men and women that work for our organization. We're committed to excellence in all that we do. Now, we're going to make mistakes, and then we're going to address those mistakes.
With 1,600 plus troopers in the state, if you look at the percentage of it, occasionally there's going to be somebody that may end up with something on their shoe that shouldn't be. It's highly likely, and Mike, unfortunately, I think the public, oftentimes, if I had to say to a news situation, a negative thing that they do, oftentimes they don't give you enough airtime to explain. A situation can occur that can be devastating, and they give you 10 seconds to deal with it and then remove the mic. Is that kind of problematic in your mind?
It is sometimes, and unfortunately, the Highway Patrol was just like any other Fortune 500 company across the nation. We're going to have a very, very small percentage of individuals who do not rise to the high standard of our organization. But the general public needs to understand that that individual is not a representative of every trooper and every civilian member of this organization. We have people day in and day out that are doing good things that's not reported on by the media. One of the largest things that I saw was a transition when Colonel McNeill came into office. He wanted to increase our social media platforms, showcasing the good things that our members are doing. And now I see, after him giving my office the example of, we got to develop good equity. We got to show the case our individuals every day. And that's one of the things that the Public Information Office attempts to do on our Facebook, Twitter feeds, is to showcase our members changing a tire, assisting somebody regardless of what the case may be. We had one member during Florence that used his own personal pickup truck to put his patrol car on the back of a trailer and get it through floodwaters so he could go to work the next day. That type of stuff is not seen.
And we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to expand on that a little bit and talk about some of the things maybe that folks don't oftentimes see troopers do, which is a couple that you just alluded to, but that goes into many areas. So I think it's opportunistic for us to be able to say, listen, it's not just the 10-second news flash you see, it's the in-depth things it's done. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking with the Colonel with the Highway Patrol, Sergeant Mike Baker as well, and we're talking about the North Carolina Highway Patrol and how it impacts your life.
You come out to replace a bad sensor, and that adds a 5-year commitment to my contract, and you don't tell me? Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping homes secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody try to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're talking with Colonel Glenn McNeill, the North Carolina Highway Patrol, talking with First Sergeant Mike Baker. Both of you gentlemen not only are familiar with Highway Patrol, but you have journeyed quite some time within that organization and within the command structure of that organization. And I wanted to list and maybe spell out some things, Colonel, that attributes that you have achieved and all those kinds of things. And I started looking at it and I said, well, I'll probably take half the show just going through with awards and different things that you have done. That's a given. With the Highway Patrol, there's no way you would be anywhere close to where you are unless you had done a lot of good things exactly the right way. So I'll leave it at that if it's okay. I might touch on some things at the next break. But I want to kind of segue a bit. We've gone through a couple of tragedies here in eastern North Carolina, particularly in the past 2 years, one and then another one. The second one was called Florence. And it really has impacted not only our operation of how we deal with our daily lives, but as a number of people with FEMA and the Small Business Administration that's been on this show talked about, it's devastated many lives. I mean, they will never be the same. What we knew of or thought as home has completely changed. In the middle of that storm, regularly and literally in the middle of the storm, was the North Carolina Highway Patrol. How did they do their job? What do you think?
A willingness to be committed to serving their fellow man or woman. We had outstanding state troopers who themselves had damage and lost their homes, but they still were willing to want to come to work, to be deployed someplace else, to go help others that were in need. During the height of the storm, this hurricane event was a storm unlike any storm that we have ever received in our state's history. More than 30 inches of rain over that 3+ day period of time. The devastation and the flooding that this region received was unprecedented. Essentially, the southeastern portion of our state was cut off from the rest of the state. Most of our main highways that traveled east and west down into this region were all flooded. It was the great work of our state troopers that would do various missions that were outside of our normal calls for duties. Some of the things such as delivering vital blood and DNA testing of infant children to make it to a lab in Raleigh that had to be there within a short time frame in order to be a valid test from the time of a child being born. Troopers volunteering their time to go build and repair other folks' structures in their communities, just being of service. At the height of the storm, the Highway Patrol deployed 48 squads of personnel to this region, which was a total of 363 state troopers, pulling them from all over the state into this region to make sure that we had the resources and the support needed, along with our partners with the Department of Transportation. They had an additional 2,000 people that were surged into this region. Our National Guard partners whom deployed 3,000 plus guardsmen to be able to come down and support this entire state. So we believe in prior planning. We believe in working with our private, public, government, all of our partners to have a holistic approach to supporting. You know, this region has been devastated by this storm, and we're going to continue to do all that we can to support this region and to make sure that we continue the rebuilding process.
Mike, I know you were on the front lines with a lot of that. You were on the front lines many times, and the wind was still blowing kind of hard, and probably a lot of people was wondering why you were out there. When you look at what was going on, there was, seems to me, in talking with folks and just observation, there was a sense of, I guess, security, of peace, just knowing the patrol was in the area or close by. I mean, a lot of folks will tell you a black and silver vehicle really means a lot, and they see that state seal and it rolls through. They know there's a command presence there. Talk to us about that a little bit with the patrol, because that's so critically important in a time of total chaos, when literally kind of the baby's washed away and you're at the worst moment in your life, and you look and there's water up to the eaves of your house, and I've interviewed a few of those folks. It's even hard for them to explain, but you guys are there. Talk to us about that.
As the Colonel alluded to, I was able to get out on the front line, so to speak, whenever we began our relief efforts through Florence, and I was able to get out and speak to some troopers who had been on post for 3 or 4 days in very hot and humid conditions. Some of the general public that I had spoke to, just like you said, I went down to Robeson County one day to capture our members in action for our social media platforms, and just to go around and ask them if they needed any assistance, and just to talk to the general public and get the praises from the public for us sending our members down to do a job, what we see as a job, but not only a job, but a service to the citizens of our state. And not only from the public, but also from the members. Like I said, these troopers are away from their homes. Some of their homes have been damaged. Their families are having to keep the home fires burning while they're gone. And one of the things that I saw among all the troopers that I spoke to, regardless of rank, they never complained. They never complained one time about being there. They never shifted focus on their mission of providing public safety to the citizens that they were serving in whatever community they were in. That was one of the most captivating things to me is, all of us are human. We all have human nature, and these troopers rose above that and realized that there was a need, and they met that need without complaint, and that was very admirable to me.
Colonel, sometimes in listening to what Mike just said and in your commentary, it seems to me that it also kind of changes the view sometimes of the public of the North Carolina Highway Patrol being an enforcer. And it all of a sudden moves it into a category. These folks are also saviors of our lives, saviors of our property, allowing us to have food, to be able to get that medical supply to the right place. Because without that, it would go from catastrophe to complete shutdown, loss of life, and just keep adding to that, because it does take opening the roads. We had situations just in this county where folks were just on an island. They couldn't get food. They were completely shut down. I was visiting an area just the past few days down in the southern part of this county. It borders Bladen and that area, and it was total devastation down there. But when you roll up on the scene, they know that connectivity's there. They know that there's something there larger than the community, larger than the municipality, larger than the county. And it's that presence that makes the difference. Is that kind of where you're going with the image of the patrol?
Yes, sir, you're spot on, but I would like to also share, as it relates to Florence, for an example, one of the unsung pieces of work that was done by our state troopers at night was the work that they did through a partnership. We have a drone program in partnership with the Department of Transportation. Every night, our folks were working tirelessly, our troopers with our drone capabilities, partnering with DOT, and our boots on the ground, literally driving 4x4s and partnering with the National Guard. They ran routes all night long to identify safe passage routes each and every night for our first responders, because the way the water moved up and down different places, a road that could be clear today, 12 hours later, could be flooded. So we were having to make adjustments constantly. And it was those troopers and our drone technology that were able to open and have these rescue routes open and available for our emergency responders to get goods and services and personnel and commodities from the western central parts of our state down to the affected areas.
These kind of things, and maybe it's just, I'm kind of reflecting here for a moment, but it seems that we've had more of these, what has been referred to as natural disasters occurring. It's almost like a kind of a regular basis kind of thing. And I'm not going to try to predict, because I certainly hope it slows up, but it's not just one part of the state. You know, we had situations in the western part where we had mountains and mudslides and all these kinds of things going on that devastated homes and destroyed people. On the front lines of that, and there's an expectation there that the North Carolina Highway Patrol is going to be there. So it moves your organization and what you guys represent way beyond what this 1929 graduating class started. You're in a whole nother world now, and you just opened a door for me, because I want to talk about some technology stuff a bit, but the drone technology, the ability and capability and capacity with the Highway Patrol, the things that you use now. I want to talk about that as well. So we can start that. We're going to take another break in just a second, but we can start that discussion a bit. And Mike, I'll kind of move to you, because I know with the Viper program in North Carolina, it's been something that's been on the cooker for a long time, back to 9/11. Talk about that a bit and where we're at with it.
Well, one of the biggest things that I think law enforcement in general across the country learned at the conclusion of 9/11 was a communication gap between not only law enforcement but all first responders. And that's something that the Highway Patrol has partnered to work very diligently towards bridging that gap of communication to where we as law enforcement can talk to other respective local agencies as well as other first responders, fire department, EMS officials in the event that we have a catastrophic event. This Viper network was tested during Florence and our other catastrophic events that we've experienced this year. And we're very proud to continue that network.
We're going to take another break, and we're going to be back in a moment. I want to kind of, I guess, move into this last segment, coming up with a discussion more about the technology piece, and also looking at the Highway Patrol down the road from now, maybe a futuristic glimpse from the eyes of the commander as what he sees. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. Call a friend, stay tuned. The North Carolina Highway Patrol is in the house. Commander Glenn McNeill, First Sergeant Mike Baker will be back in 1 minute.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. North Carolina Highway Patrol is with us today. Colonel McNeill has an associate degree from Durham Technical College, a bachelor's in business administration, a concentration in business management and organizational development from University of Mount Olive, at the time Mount Olive College. He also holds graduate certificates in criminal justice from the University of Virginia, also graduate the 42nd session of the Administrative Officers Management Program by North Carolina State University, 262nd session of the National Guard at the Federal Bureau of Investigation in Quantico, Virginia, recipient of North Carolina Governor's Award for Bravery, North Carolina Governor's Award for Excellence, and the Heroism Award from the North Carolina Department of Public Safety. I said I wasn't going to try to read all that stuff, and so I just read a portion of it, if that's okay, Colonel. I want folks to understand that a couple of things very quickly about you and my short time of knowing you. I feel like I've known you for a while, but you are not only a man of deep spirit and faith, but you have an innate, truly concern about other human beings, and that's something oftentimes that's not said on the media, Mike, and I just love to say that here, is that people of God for the purpose of God is always a good thing to say in any environment. So,
bless you and thank you.
So let me get back to what we were talking about here and ask you the question. As we're on this last segment now, where do you see the Highway Patrol, the North Carolina Highway Patrol, from the position you are? Because you can look back a number of years, but let's look futuristically for a moment. You touched on drones. You touched on some of the technology. We mentioned the Viper program, which deals with technology and interactivity. Where do you see the Highway Patrol in a few years from now?
Well, in January 1, we will implement and institute our next 3-year strategic plan. And in that plan, we look at opportunities to improve in how we see, acquire, and use various new technologies. How do we upgrade our computer dispatch that we rely upon for our troopers? Being able to identify where they are located at ahead of time before we dispatch them to a various incident. Better tracking of our equipment, our assets, and being more accountable. So how can we use technology to benefit the very work that our troopers are doing? How can we keep them safer? You know, everything that we do, if I ever, as I receive monthly updates about our financial posture for a given month, whenever there's any spare change lying around, I'm always challenging our staff. What can we do with this money to be able to purchase safety equipment for our uniform and our civilian our civilian personnel? We're always looking at best practices from our other state and local partners. The Highway Patrol, in order for us to be successful, we have to have excellent partnerships with the Sheriff's Association, the 2 Chiefs Associations that exist in North Carolina. We have to have awesome working relationships with them. So in the future, in order for us to be successful, we have to continue to partnership with one another. Currently, the North Carolina State Highway Patrol, we have 151 vacant trooper positions spread out all throughout the state of North Carolina. That's a challenge for us. So one of the things I see us doing is working tirelessly to fulfill those vacancies. The General Assembly, we want to continue to work very closely with them under Governor Cooper's leadership and under Secretary Hooks' leadership to be able to gain their support, to aid with trooper pay raises for our folks, upgrades in our office spaces, hopefully a new training academy, a new headquarters. I see those things down the road, continue to partnership with because we're in the transportation business, working with our various car dealerships, manufacturers to make sure that the equipment that they make is as safe as possible for the troopers who will be using those cars to patrol in, because essentially they are their office spaces. Mm-hmm. So doing all that we can to look at technology to see how it can help us do our job that much better, but to most importantly, to keep our troopers safe and for us to be as responsive as we can be to the citizens that we have taken an oath to support and those who may call upon us needing our assistance.
And, you know, gentlemen, and listening to you talk, one of the things that I think is important for folks to understand too, this is kind of a bipartisan issue. We're talking about safety and security issues that fit any segment on any area in North Carolina. It goes beyond the mantle of thinking, well, you know, we can put this off or we can put that off. There's certain things you can't put off because the changing of times and the expectations are so rapidly changing. If you put yourself in a status quo position, we talked a little bit before we came on air, if you put yourself in a status quo position, you're going to be left behind double time and you're going to be going, what? I don't even know how to function in today's world. And that goes with technology. I mean, look at what you can do just from the, as you pointed out, that four-wheel office space. I mean, all kinds of information is available to you. And it's literally speed of light almost. Mike, are you seeing the hesitation of people? Because, and I heard that 150 down, it just seems to me there may be people out there that thinks, well, I just can't do that. What would you say to somebody who says, well, I thought about it, but I'm not sure I can, quote, do that?
Well, being a trooper is not just a job, it's a calling. This is not a profession that we like to say for someone to use as a stepping stone, so to speak. When I came on the patrol and several others who worked with me, to include Colonel McNeill, this is a passion that you have to have on the inside to provide that service to the citizens of North Carolina, as well as those who visit our state from abroad. I would encourage anybody who is interested in going to see if they have what it takes to be a trooper to reach out to their local recruiting office, identify what it requires to become a North Carolina State Trooper, to wear this uniform, and to be a part of the best law enforcement agency across the nation. A lot of people may be apprehensive based off of what they see on social media or what they see on the media. Give us a chance. We will definitely open your eyes to a tremendous opportunity if you will just approach us with it.
Colonel, I've had an opportunity in my career in which I would have folks coming into a basic class when I was with a college, and their expectation of what law enforcement was the latest TV police show. And oftentimes it would take 2 or 3 weeks to just get them to understand, there's a lot of paperwork in this job. There's a lot of personal responsibility in this job. Do you have that same thing happening now as people come in? Maybe they think they just got out of the Marine Corps and this is going to be a no-brainer for them. But it completely changes because civilian law enforcement is totally different.
It definitely is, and it's interesting that you said the Marine Corps. I challenge new recruits when I was the director of training that because you are a veteran, we honor your service, but you entering this academy will be one of the most difficult things that you've ever done. Amen. Because unlike in the military, when you go through boot camp, you've been kidnapped. Mm-hmm. You're on an island someplace, you're secluded, mm-hmm. and you're forced to complete their training. Whereas when you're with us, free will kicks in and you have your car keys in your pocket and you're going through a very difficult, and you're being challenged from 5 o'clock in the morning until 10 p.m. when you lay your head on that pillow to go to bed. And you're exhausted, but the whole time these instructors are challenging you to leave. So you have to be willing to want to go through the process to become a North Carolina State Trooper. And they're going to challenge you for 29 weeks mm-hmm. and try to run you off. And it's just to make sure that you have what it takes to be a State Trooper.
I want to get this question in because I've had 2 or 3 of your predecessors, colonels, on previously. I've always asked them this question. And Mike probably is thinking, I know what that question is. When you go to bed at night, you lay your head on that pillow. Before you go to sleep, what's one of the last thoughts you're thinking about?
The safety of our North Carolina State Troopers.
Wow.
Every night, without fail, without fail.
He passed the bar, Mike. That was a good answer to that question. And just so you'll know, that's typically what I've heard from every colonel that I've interviewed. They are concerned about the guys that's on the road, and that bodes so well. That's such a powerful feeling overall. Mike, your comment?
I agree. Like the colonel said, we've lost 3 troopers this year. Trooper Kevin Cotter was a personal friend of mine. I knew his family well, and when the colonel called me the night and told me the dreaded news, he and I both wept together. And it's something that you do not take for granted. The safety of our members is paramount, and I have definitely seen that with this command staff, with the Colonel McNeill's leadership. Every day he strives to make sure that our troopers make it home safely and gets back to their families.
And if folks want to do this, they can go to the website. There's a gravesite map that basically shows geographically the troopers that were killed in the line of duty since 1929. And I found that somewhat just kind of amazing because you just scroll over it and there's the person's name, where they're located, and it gives you pause. It gives you pause because when you think about it, it's easy for folks on the other side that's not out there to take that for granted. So we're at close, so I'll give you 15 seconds for wrap. That's kind of small, but Colonel?
Sir, the families that are attached to those people killed in the line of duty, we owe it to them to honor their legacy, and we're going to do just that. I'm so thankful for the opportunity to be here.
Mike?
I echo his sentiments. Thank you very much for having us.
Well, thank you for being here. And folks, we want to say thank you to the North Carolina Highway Patrol for what they do each and every day. We'll continue to hold you in high honors as you do this state and the nation as you do your job. We also want to ask you to keep these folks in your prayers as we move forward. This show is airing on the first day of 2019, and we salute the North Carolina Highway Patrol with great pride and assurance that they will always be there for us. Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to seeing you in the coming months and weeks. And as always, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.